heart rate marathon program. And this is I felt like this question deserves something a little more thorough, and I'm better at unpacking thorough things in this format than I am on Facebook. Plus, I can do it a whole lot faster than trying to type and double type and make sure that what I mean comes through. So she says she's working on nutrition, which she's slacked on recently. That's okay. I double up on strength most days. Good. Sleep could be improved as my work hours have recently changed. Okay, good. I mean, you're on top of the basics, and that's really important. Here's the tricky part. She says, I knew this cycle would be a building cycle. I saw a PT and finally put in all the work that I didn't know I needed to do after my youngest was born 4 years ago. Congratulations on getting it done. Most people never will. Give yourself some credit there. My core, hips, and glutes are strong again, and I have more to build on for next cycle. My nutrition isn't perfect, but much better. These are all very good things that I should be more focused on. I guess my biggest fear is that I put in all of this work and race day might still be a disaster. I'm going to pause there and say that is a risk we take with any race. We have no idea what the weather's going to be ahead of time. We have no way of knowing what life is going to throw at us. So this is one of the reasons why I talk about detaching your self-worth and your sense of self from one race, and understanding that one day might not be representative of what you earned and the work that you put in, and that has nothing to do with you. Life is just unfair, and it sucks sometimes. And I know you adult real hard, and I know you're a grown-up, and I know you know that. But here, I point that out because of what you say next. My first marathon was hot, humid, and windy, and I finished in 5:31, which was far slower than I expected. There you go. What you can't do is say, hey, you know what? My first marathon was a sucky day, but I finished it anyway in 5:31. Wasn't the time I wanted, but I persevered in terrible conditions. And that's what you guys don't do. You say, this sucked, therefore I suck, and I don't like feeling like I suck. And that's not quite what you said, but or that might not be what you intended to convey. But with those words, that's kind of what you said, right? It was hot, windy, and humid, and I didn't do well. Okay, we can't train away 100% of the pain. We can't, because, distance events just hurt. All we can do is make sure, number one, that you're appropriately trained to cover the distance. And that's a big deal. Most people will, when I say that most people will show up underprepared and overtrained, what I mean is they wanted to do the sexy runs. They did all the speed work. Maybe they did some of the long runs, but they didn't do enough supporting work in between. You can't pick and choose which part of the training plan you're going to do. Again, not saying that you did. What I am saying is you've got to give yourself more credit. Your first marathon was under crappy conditions, and I'd say you did terrifically well, like insanely well. That is great. My first marathon, that should be something to be proud of. It shouldn't be something that you used to feel bad about yourself. And if you think a time will make you feel good, a finish time, let me tell you, you're incorrect. If you go back and look at the Thursday Extra and click on the note, I put a link to an article about Joan Benoit Samuelson in 1985 when she won the Chicago Marathon, but she didn't cross that mythical 2:20 barrier, which for women is the big marathon barrier. Only very few people have ever done that in their lifetime. So to that effect, she doesn't even look at that and say, I won a marathon. She says, I should have been faster by a minute and change. If I had only thought ahead of time, I could have done it. She has regrets about winning a marathon. I say that to let that sink in. There is no time that will ever be fast enough, and no performance that will ever be good enough. What makes the difference is how you walk away from that moment saying, this is what I'll do differently next time, versus I suck at this, I made my family sacrifice a whole lot so that I could do this thing that I'm not very good at, and you're like, and it's easy to creep down a rabbit hole and start apologizing instead of saying, hey, it wasn't what I wanted. Boom. Whatever, but I trained anyway. None of this was what I wanted, but I trained anyway. So you say you don't want that to happen again. I can't promise weather on your race day. All I can do is offer up a list of races that are statistically more likely to bring more favorable conditions. I can't promise that they'll be near you, accessible, or still have spots left, right? There's only so much that we can do. So I know that I'm not saying this is what you're asking of us. What I'm saying is there's just a lot to unpack in this statement. So if you don't, I understand you don't want that to happen again, but this is where you kind of embrace the DNS. And you say, hey, you know what? It's hot, windy, and humid, and I know what I did last time when it was hot, windy, and humid. and I don't want to run today. And I'm going to wait until there's better weather, or I feel more prepared, or and that's always an option, right? What I don't want is for you to wake up and say, this is going to suck, but I'm going to do it anyway, and then use that to make that finish time to make you feel bad about yourself. Everything about that is kind of twisted and wrong, but it's so common that I have to call it out before we get there. So you don't have to run that race. I've been training for New York. I stopped training for New York about 3 weeks ago, and I'm good with that because you guys have heard me say before in the podcasts, I don't like doing anything one thing without stopping for more than 5 hours. 5 hours for me is my personal limit. And if I were to run New York this time, it would take me over 5 hours. So I had to sit back and say, is this race going to be what I want it to be? And I say no, and I'm withdrawing. I'm going to run it next year. I'm not going to run it this year because I'm not ready. My mind isn't ready. It won't be the race I want it to be. So I'm giving you permission to do the same to yourself. If you truly think this is not going to be the race you want, you need to think about, what do I need to get out of race day? Write it down. Have a solid idea of that. And if race day comes and it's not likely to bring those conditions, you got to say, I'm not running today. And that doesn't make you a quitter. That means you're taking control. If quitting is going to make you feel worse than going out and getting a finish time, then you've just put yourself in a corner. And it's a no-win situation, and it's sort of a mental trap. As your coach, I'm going to encourage you to let yourself out of that mental trap, because you've just created a place where you can't win either way. You're damned if you lose, and you're damned if you run, and you're damned if you don't. So sit back and think. We've still got time. Like, just because we've gotten this far into training doesn't mean we have to continue for this race. You can also hop on office hours with me, and I can help you figure out what your next best step is. But maybe it's not a marathon this cycle, and that's all right. There are plenty of ways to be coached and loved and interact and part of a group and working towards something that doesn't involve a marathon. God knows, I have to ask myself, if it wasn't New York, my favorite race, my favorite marathon, one that I've run so frequently and felt strong at so many times, would I be willing to run it right now? And the answer is maybe, but because it's New York, and because I've run it strong, and I've run it in a strong body, and I've run it under good conditions, and I'm pretty sure I'm not going to get what I've gotten before, that was why I decided to kind of walk away. So, and I don't see that as quitting at all. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. If y'all watching me judge me for it and you're like, well, if MK's a quitter, sure, I'm a quitter. I can think of way worse things you can call me if you want some suggestions, but they won't bother me either. And that's really what you need to be. What do I need to get out of this day? What do I need to have at the end of this training plan? And then let's find a way to get it. Because if you're in a place where running it's not going to make you feel good, and not running it's not going to make you feel good, then we got to find a way out of that mental maze. And your secret goal, so many people have gone from 531 to BQ. That's ridiculous. I can introduce you to people. I can't promise it's going to happen in one training cycle, but I mean, if you put in the work, I've said this before, and I strongly believe it. They did make the qualifying standards faster, but any person you don't need a modicum of talent. You need a lot of focus and a lot of dedication and a lot of tenacity. Normal people can qualify for Boston. It's not, it's a labor of love for sure, but it can happen. The Olympic trials, I can't say that. The Olympics, you need a whole host of things to fall into place for that to work out. But Boston, yeah, that's a great secret goal to have. It's not silly. There's nothing wrong with that goal and nothing wrong with you. And if every day you don't reach that goal makes you feel bad, then we need to think about what we need to focus on to get through the day. Because you're coached, you're loved. You've got so much going for you right now. You're stronger than you've been before. You've taken proactive steps to shore up your body in really strong ways. Give yourself some credit for what you've done, and don't put yourself in a place where you can feel bad about what hasn't clicked together yet. Okay? So, and that might not be the answer you want to hear, but all I can say is this: I'm not going to make promises I can't keep. I can't promise that the weather's going to be good. I can't promise that you're going to be as ready as you want to be. All I can promise with any of my training programs is, if you do what I say to do, the way I say to do it, by the time race day comes, you will be ready to cover the distance. That's all I can do. And I can coach you and love you along the way to make sure you're making good choices. I can help you I give you a framework for good decision making on race day, because really that final number is going to be as much a product of all the little choices you make along the way when you're out there as it is all the training you did the 20 weeks before. But that doesn't mean we need to throw it away and not do it again, because it's hard and challenging and there are a lot of variables to control. The hardest variable to control is the one in your head, telling you that you suck. That's not analyzing anything. That's confirmation bias. That's fear speaking. That's looking for proof that you suck, and you don't suck. You never did, and you never will, because you're coached and you're loved. And I'm going to believe in you. And even if you don't do that right now, I'm going to believe enough for both of us, because that is my superpower. And you're going to have this as long as you need it.